We're almost ready to put the floor back down again. We've got the conduit run. We've got our copper run through that conduit along with the low volt wiring for the heater, which I'll show you in just a second. And the last time we were shooting, the last week when we were working, we got the water heater installed, and you already saw that. This will take the hot water and the cold water. This will be the inflow for the cold. This will be the hot out. And this is the gas in. But that's not this gas. This propane is just for the heater up in the front. We opted to go with a propane heater for the inside of the van because I didn't want to hassle. This is an older Sprinter. It doesn't have a second connection for the diesel. I didn't want to hassle with putting in a new connection for diesel. And besides, after researching everything, I discovered that the propane heater is quieter and more efficient than the diesel. The only difference is you got to carry propane, which I'm carrying anyway for this water heater. So what's the big deal? May as well just run propane. This is the location, the future location of where my propane locker is going to sit, but I'm waiting to cut that hole in the outside of the van until I have the locker door and I can make certain that all of that's going to lay out properly. Let's go check out the heater. So the propane comes through the conduit here. And right along the side of the interior of that seat compartment, we've got the seat removed right now, and we've got the propane hooked up already to the propane heater right here. These are the leads that we'll hook up later on once we get the kit finished for the solar and the electricity and the power. But we've already got both vents hooked up too that go down through the floor for the exhaust and the makeup air, and this is the hot air coming out, and right next to this vent here is going to be the air return, the return air to the unit itself that just brings cool air off the floor into the heater, heats it up, and then shoots it out through this hot air duct. So here's the pigtail that comes with the heating unit. This fitting just slips right into here and locks it in, and at the other end of it there's another fitting that plugs right into the thermostat, which we're going to run inside one of the frame walls that we'll be building later. You've heard me say this before, I'm going to say it again because it really bears repeating. I've learned this after 40 or more years in construction, and a lot of folks who do these van conversions don't have that kind of construction experience. So I really want you to know that it's critical to have a really good drawing before you start anything. I've already talked about that with the SketchUp drawing. And have a plan. Write it down if you need to. Our plan is to install all the major appliances and the utilities for those appliances, the ones that need to go in now before we seal up the floor or the walls. Once the major appliances are in, like the water heater and the heater, then I'll start thinking about running all of the miscellaneous wiring, which is real easy to do. As far as the water, all that kind of plumbing, that's going to go in after the cabinets because we're going to run that right on the surface of the cabinets. So we've got our conduit in, we've got our gas in, we've got our electric in for this appliance, just as we do for the water heater in the back, and we're ready to finish putting the floor down. So now the floor can go back in. And the cool thing is, now we've got backing. We even put some tape down here so we know exactly where the backing is so we can screw this floor down right to the wood backing. A lot of people make a big deal out of this thermal bridging issue. Thermal bridging is going to occur from the transfer of heat loss through this wood, because wood will transfer cold right through it, whereas the foam insulation won't. So yeah, I'm going to have a little bit of heat loss through the wood itself, but hardly any. And the real point is, I put the wood backing in under the cabinets in the shower. This area in here, in the center of the van, is where my cork flooring is going to go. That's where my feet are going to go. My feet aren't going to touch this outer surface at all. Here's the second piece of floor sheeting. We had to make an extra little notch right there where the copper tubing came up through the conduit. And it goes right back in again. I'm just running a strip of G-tape down here, right where the backing in the floor is. So it's really easy to see where the wood is. I mean, you can draw lines with the level or something if you want to, but the tape's so much easier. You see it like that quick, and you know exactly where to put a screw. My biggest paranoia, the most anxiety-producing task, is laying out to cut the holes in the roof and in the walls of the van. Obviously, you only get one shot at this. I mean, to get it right. So I'm making cardboard templates, and most of the products that I purchased, the installation instructions for almost every one of them suggested making a cardboard template, and I think that's really smart. So here's the tricky part. Now that you got your cardboard templates, you got to decide where to place them on the roof. So be careful. In my case, I've got a short wheelbase Sprinter, and I don't have a lot of room up there for the solar panel, which is just over 6 feet long, and the skylight and the fan. But there is enough room if you lay it out carefully. Remember that the outside flanges on both the skylight and the fan unit are much wider, much larger in footprint size than the actual cut itself. So don't put your cuts so close together that you don't have room for the flanges on the outside, because then you're going to be kind of upset when you go to install them and they don't work out. So lay these things out first. Make sure you have enough room between them for these units to operate. This skylight opens and it hinges at this end, so it's got plenty of room now, plenty of gap between the fan unit and the skylight for the skylight to open, and plenty of room for the fan lid to open too, because it also opens and ventilates. I've taped up both of my cardboard templates. I drew a line right down the center of both templates so I could find something to center these off of, but be careful of that too. You can register off of some of these ribs and get yourself kind of square to the truck, to the ceiling, but remember, the sections of the ceiling are sometimes cockeyed, so you'll measure off of one detent on this side, and then you'll measure down here and you'll go, wait a minute, why isn't it straight? And it could be because your cardboard isn't quite straight, your template isn't straight, but it could also be because when they laid up the roof at the plant, they didn't get the sheets perfectly aligned. So check this out very carefully. The center line is going to help you a lot. It'll keep you centered in the vehicle right on the center rib, and it'll keep you centered on the other fixture that you're installing as well. So everything's laid out perfectly. I have 5 inches between my units, which is an additional inch. I needed 4 so that they would clear, and I added another inch just to be sure. And I line these things up right on some of these ribs, so I won't have to cut through every stinking piece of metal in this roof. And there is the fan unit. Once I pull the cardboard off, I'll take an 1/8 inch drill bit and I'll drill every corner. Then I'm going to go up on the roof to finish this off. The face shield's awesome, they aren't that expensive, and they give you 100% confidence that you're not going to get like sharp shards of metal in your face or in your eyes. So if you're drilling holes and cutting holes in your roof of your van or even in the side of the van, pick one of these things up. Cheap insurance. This is pretty simple. It's just a connect the dots kind of thing. I'm just following the holes that we drilled. And again, I'm using that G-tape. I really like it because it sticks so well, even to this dirty surface. So now all I have to do is follow the inside of my tape line. I made sure that with both of these, this is the vent, the hole for the vent, and this will be the cutout for the skylight. And both of them, I kept the tape on the outside of the line. So I'll always be cutting inside the tape. And that's it. Once again, got my mask on. So you probably noticed that I reached in there and grabbed both those cutoff pieces, because if you don't, they're going to bend down inside the van and they'll pinch on the blade. You don't have to hold on to it once you've cut through, just let it go. You just have to pick it up high enough so you can take the pinch off the blade and it won't be bound up, so you can finish your cut easy. Just try to knock the burrs off and to smooth that cut up a little bit so it'll take the paint better, because we got to prime every single one of these cuts. I've got these ribs up here. I've seen some people that actually cut them off and bend them down and go through this whole rigmarole. Isn't necessary. We just put additional layers of butyl tape in between the ribs, and now I'm going to run another layer right across the top. And the only difference is we got several rolls of this stuff. Some of it's black, some of it's white. It doesn't matter what the color is, just that you put it down properly. You want to overlap all your corners. And the beauty of this stuff is that it compresses. It's not just adhesive, but it compresses and it'll seal up all of the gaps around the skylight, so we won't have to worry about it. It cuts pretty quick with a pair of scissors. So a pair of scissors is pretty much all you need. Now I can set the skylight in here. I want the handle here pointing toward the back, and that's it. We used up almost a whole roll of butyl just on the opening for this little vent for the fan. But it ain't gonna leak. And this one I can screw down right from the top. So since I've got 4 or 5 layers of butyl in some areas and just 1 layer in others, I'm being real careful how much tension or torque I put onto each one of these screws. I'm not drawing them down really tight, because if I do, I'll deflect the surface up here, and that'll make it difficult to get the vent to fit properly. So I'm holding my finger right on the edge here, right on the edge of the fin, and feeling it as I pull it down toward the top of the truck. And I can see the side starting to deflect just as it begins to connect with the butyl and draw the butyl down and create a really good seal. And you can see how we've got butyl squeeze out all the way around this thing. All right, that drew it down really good. There was daylight in the corners, but let me tighten this one up a little bit too. Oop, there we go. And this one. There we go. That pulled the skylight straight down tight against that butyl and drew it in there, so it sealed it off really good. It's really, really important not to run any sealant on the top of the roof until after you've drawn all of these appliances down tight against, as tight as you can get them against the roof on the outside, and then apply the sealant. Otherwise, the sealant's going to start to set up and you're going to be screwed. But this skylight, I got to tell you right now, it's a really cool thing. It operates really, really smoothly, but the instructions leave a little bit to be desired. The illustrations, the only illustrations they include is this sheet here with no real explanation of what they're talking about. And then in the instruction booklet, there are absolutely no diagrams and no illustrations at all, none. And so you got to kind of figure this out as you go. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Skylight's only designed to fit in certain ceiling thicknesses. It has to be so thick that the clip can not quite touch the plastic retainer here on the skylight, but it has to be thick enough so that you've got some tension on this screw right here. So you run this screw in lightly, then you put your wood behind here, behind the clip, then run 2 screws into the wood, then tighten this screw up, and it pulls the skylight down. So what I'm going to end up having to do is I've got the skylight all pulled down against the butyl now, so I'm really done on the inside. So I'm going to take the trim, and all you have to do is set it inside the skylight, right like this, and that's it. It just snaps into those clips. It's held in by friction. If you ever need to get in there, all you have to do is pop this thing off. And now I have the blackout screen, and I've got the bug screen too. Push on this little release and pull the bar down, and it locks in place.